Google CEO Schmidt is resigning from Apple's board as the competition and overlap between the two tech giants grows. For more on that, we're joined by Ernst. He's analyst over at Hudson Square Research. Good afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
So surprised to see Mr. Schmidt step down, or not necessarily?
Not at this point. I mean, the overlap is beginning to grow, starting with Android and the announcement over Chrome OS. So I think this was going to happen. It was only a matter of when.
He had to.
I don't know if he had to, but I think that his effectiveness on the board is definitely reduced because he really can't talk about things that Apple are doing. Apple can't talk to him about what they're doing on a big part of their business, which is their software.
I mean, the two are starting to compete, correct?
Correct.
All right, so you've got to kind of keep these things separate.
Right.
You hope.
I mean, the overlap today is de minimis, right? Google has near zero revenues coming from the things that Apple is doing. But in the future, obviously.
What impact, if at all, does Mr. Schmidt's departure have on Apple?
I think zero, both short and long term. Filling that position with someone who's a forward-thinking technology leader, sitting on Apple's board is a very prominent position. I think a number of people would be interested in having that. So I think they can find talented people to replace them. They have a very talented board to begin with. They have a very talented management team. So I don't think there's any impact whatsoever on Apple's business.
All right. What do you think is more important when we look at the Apple story and the Google story, for that matter? Right.
Well, from Apple's perspective, it's that continual march of market share gains in both PCs, where they have globally a 3% share, right? You can't even measure their share in the overall $1.1 billion handset market, right? They're going to sell 20 million iPhones this year, right? So they have a long way to go, and that's the big thing. And so we've seen that progression have tremendous leverage on their earnings model. For instance, in the last quarter, their cash earnings, when you adjust for the deferred revenue on their iPhone, grew 78% year over year.
Pretty amazing.
78% a year. And the company itself, top line 10% probably this year, 9-10% in a market where technology is shrinking. So Apple's continuing to do very well.
Can it keep it up in your view?
I think they can. Again, 3% market share, right? But if you look at young people, right, in our college surveys, they have 35% share. They have 3% global. So today's college students are tomorrow's technology leaders. So I think they have a long way to go, and they're marching in that direction.
All right. In terms of the march, in what direction they're marching, I mean, Apple at this point doesn't really compete, as you said, in any of Google's core businesses, but down the road.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that Apple has a plan to, but Google clearly has an announced plan to compete in Apple's business, which is to offer operating system to both PCs through their Chrome OS, and eventually they could turn Chrome into a competitor of Android, because Android isn't really part of the Google core operations.
Right. How successful do you think Google will be?
I think it's going to be very, very tough. I mean, look at Linux. Right. When netbooks came to the market, really just a year and a half ago, the vast majority of them were Linux-based. You go on today, as Microsoft said in their analyst meeting last week, 95% of netbooks today have Windows on them. Right. Why? Because all the software that people are used to using in applications from businesses work on Windows, and Linux still has a very, very small share. So Google comes out and attempts to have an operating system that's going to affect the broader market. I think they could have the same limitations that Linux has had, but the difference is there they have a key guy pushing it, which is a company. Linux didn't have a single champion. But on the flip side, for Apple, it kind of doesn't matter, because none of those guys compete with what Apple does. Apple has integrated hardware, integrated software, so even Google won't be able to do that.
I think bottom line, though, Dan, is that everybody's got to kind of keep an eye on Google, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Apple, because they're kind of moving into new avenues.
Absolutely. They have phenomenal balance sheet. They have a phenomenal track record in their core business, which is internet advertising and search, right? But so we have to watch what they're doing. They've got a big R&D budget, so clearly you need to examine what they're doing, and I think people are. But end of the day, consumers decide and businesses decide what products they're going to use, and so it's we can keep watch on that faster than we can watch on what Google's got on the drawing board.
All right, got it. But good to keep watching all of it.
It certainly makes it fun.
It does. It makes it interesting. Hey, Dan, thank you so much. Dan Ernst.
Thanks for having me.
Over at Hudson Square.